Welcome to Long Story Short, a podcast where two financial advisors, one rooted in financial planning, the other in investment strategy, break down the questions we're actually hearing from our clients. Each episode, we tackle one or two real-world issues that matter to high net worth individuals, from market-moving news to personal finance decisions with lasting impact. No jargon, no fluff, just clear, thoughtful insights from the front lines of wealth management. We keep it short, but we don't cut corners. This is Long Story Short.
All right, Andy, first question. You were at the beach last week. I'm living vicariously through you. Tell me all about it. How was it?
Oh man, I love the beach. Let me tell you, an 11th-month-old at the beach just wants to eat all the sand.
Yeah,
So I used to think of the beach as a relaxing vacation, but now I'm just chasing around the kids constantly.
the beach was
Although it gets
good.
fun. Yeah, it gets fun. The 5-year-old, we took boogie boarding for the first time. The waves were pretty good. We go to the North Carolina beaches, so not too far from you. And the waves were actually pretty good. I just wish I had a surfboard.
Yeah, a good escape from all the excitement this year, and also some time to check out some beachside real estate.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. And I think this was maybe front of mind because where we were, so we're down at Carolina Beach. We're way on the north side of the island, and the beach has gotten so eroded up there where they just have these gigantic rocks instead of a beach that are kind of like the wall between the ocean and the homes. But there's still all this like new construction going on down there all the time. And it really got me thinking, like, because we have clients ask us all the time about, they're considering buying a vacation home. And so, that's something that for some people it's a beach house, for some people it's a lake house. I want to ask you as the planner, when people bring that up, what types of questions do you ask them?
Well, I'll say first, anecdotally, and just through sample size of our clients and the people we work with, I find more often than not when someone buys a second home, they end up either regretting it or selling it, or it doesn't materialize into exactly what they thought they were stepping into. And there's a couple reasons for it, I think, and based on feedback and just like observationally. But, the questions are really, from a planning standpoint, it's never just the sticker price for a vacation home. There's all kinds of costs that go into owning a property. Everyone knows that. Vacation homes actually add a whole new wrinkle to that math because a lot of times these vacation homes are places you need to travel to. They're vacant for long stretches of time. So the upkeep, the maintenance, you're always running that math against how much time do I actually spend here, and the practicality of spending time in a second home, having that home away from home, and I think generally looking at it from a client standpoint, when you've got a young family, and you buy a second home, your kids eventually fall into sports and other activities and make friends, and they're less likely to want to pick up and leave to a second home frequently. So that's a big point of regret for clients. And then clients in retirement, I guess it really depends, but having just that one place to jump to, spending more in retirement than you might have anticipated as far as the second property, the costs associated with it, along with your health changing through retirement, your energy level, and then also just like, do we want to go out and explore versus be anchored to one place? So most people find, even when the math will work in their favor, that they're okay renting. They're okay renting their vacation spot, having that burden off their balance sheet, and keeping that flexibility as life changes. So uh,
So it's never as simple as just like I have this piece of real estate, I bought it, now I have it, right?
right,
Like there's a lot of work that goes into it that people don't consider.
a lot of work and time, and just when
Hmm.
you buy a primary residence, that's where you live. Your family's anchored there. Even if it's costing you more than you anticipated, it's still your home, and there's emotional attachment to living there every
Sure.
day, raising your family there. And with the second home, there's so many gaps in between when you're there and not there that ultimately, when everything adds up, you're like, well, I'm spending all this money, the upkeep, the interest, the mortgage payments, but I'm not really spending as much time there. There's this pressure to have to be there all the time, and it feels like almost like
Hmm.
a forced transaction in certain instances. But in general, I mean, I've seen it where it works, but I just feel like that's more of a personal preference, and it goes well beyond just the affordability. A lot of our clients can afford second homes. They just don't do it for the reasons I described. There's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, no, I've seen clients who it's like the snowbird thing, right? Where they'll spend, months in one area, maybe
Right.
that's where their roots are. But then when the weather turns, they'll spend, months in another area. I've even seen people do it internationally. And again, they're like, usually it's like they're escaping the weather, whether it gets really cold or if it just gets too hot in a place like,
Right.
say, Florida or something like that. So like I almost feel like for people who have those use cases and they have the roots elsewhere, maybe it could make sense. It seems like one of those things that it's so personal. For some people, it makes sense. For some people, maybe the idea of it ends up being more attractive than the reality of it.
Yeah, I think with a lot of things in finance, it's, return on hassle. What we talk about return on
Return
our,
on hassle.
yeah, we're talking about return on our portfolio. What's the return on the hassle of this extra thing I'm adding to my life? And that could be a luxury sports car, that could be a second home, it could be rental property, it could be a side business or buying a franchise. I mean, all of these things come with a lot of extra work, financially and psychologically. So, yeah, that's kind of where I land on it, and I think a lot of our clients feel the same way. But you missed an exciting week in the markets, and I think something that's been coming up, increasingly so, is this whole AI theme. And
Hmm.
we've been talking
The AI
about
trade is back.
the AI trade is like alive and well. Massive win behind the sales of the markets right now, driven by optimism around AI. But we've gotten a lot of questions about the AI trade, whether it's through AI directly or data centers or how this all connects in terms of
Hmm.
infrastructure and AI. So let's talk a little bit about just like investment themes and generally, the theme of the AI trade, and how do we approach when these hot ideas come across the market? Like, how do we integrate that into our investment process and what we think about it in general?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, real quick, I love talking about investments. Return on hassle is not something they covered in my CFA textbooks. I know you took the CFA as well, but I like that. That's more like real world,
Yeah, yeah,
the art side, the science side of it.
that's
Um,
the art equation.
Love that. Love that. As far as thematic themes go, like there's always going to be a theme that's in the market. I think, one of the things that I noticed while I was gone is like the whole meme stock thing is coming back, right? So the meme stocks were famous in the early 2020s with like, AMC, the movie theater chain during COVID going crazy, even though no one could go to the movies, GameStop, going crazy. It really these like really low quality, probably on the edge of extinction companies, all of a sudden doing really well just because like traders on Reddit decided to do that. That's maybe a little different than some of the other themes, but they're related. There can always be this like hot thing in the market. So right now we're back to AI, right? Like, and it goes beyond Nvidia, the chip makers, and the Microsofts and the Metas. Meta's investing in incredible sums of money into this. So for people who are trying to ride the wave, I would say that virtually everyone right now is playing the AI theme, right? If you own any of the Magnificent Seven stocks, for example, which you do own, whether it's a portfolio with us, whether it's an S&P 500 index fund, whatever, by and large, I'd say the vast majority of people are investing in the mega cap stocks. You're taking part in it. I think some of the questions that I've seen more recently, though, go even deeper than that. It's like, yeah, we know the big players, but what about the downstream effects of this? So, like you mentioned, data centers as part of it. That's kind of like an infrastructure play. I've even seen utilities like boring energy producing utilities companies have done really well because these AI models, they consume incredible amounts of electricity, and that electricity has to come from somewhere to the utility companies. So
Hmm.
like one of the questions that I've gotten from clients, and I've seen multiple of our advisors receive from clients, is like, how do I get into nuclear energy? There's this like exciting, modular nuclear energy reactor, like mini reactors basically that a data center will use to like produce their own energy, right? So people are like, how do I get in on that? Um, I would say that the thing with any theme is though you want to be careful because whatever the hot fad is right now can quickly turn the other direction. I'll point to a couple examples of this. Like in the mid 2010s, 3D printing stocks were all the rage. Anyone could 3D print a hammer at home or whatever they needed at home. And it was like the whole thesis is everyone's just going to have their own 3D printer and they're going to go, make their own things. If you look at the price chart of 3D printers, like you can look simply at the stock DDD, right? That's the, probably the great ticker, by the way, for a 3D printer stock. But their stock price, it's like a mountain. It goes way up, it goes way back down, and it never rebounded, right? So you do run the risk if you over allocate to a theme of that happening for you. A couple other examples. The so-called innovation stocks that were all the rage during 2020. So this is like the Kathy Wood, the ARK story. If people don't know ARK Invest, it was basically this. The whole thesis was we're going to invest in just innovation, which is essentially, if you look at the stocks, it's low profitability growth stocks, right? So it's a lot of hype, but the word innovation, it has a nice ring to it, and so a lot of people, made a lot of money if they were early into that. But by the time most of the money was piling in to their flagship fund, I think the typical investor in ARK lost money despite the extraordinary returns that were achieved there. So I think it's just, for me, it's like a cautionary tale whenever we talk about thematic investing. I think it's always interesting to follow the themes, but oftentimes the investment case can't match the hype.
Isn't this an example of like investor behavior and always wanting to hit the home run? Like, it's a play on
Mm-hmm.
our natural inclination to want to get it right and get it right in a big way. Wanting to hit the bullseye on every throw of the dart when that's not necessary and when the risk is high. Think about, yeah, I think your examples were great. I'm thinking about the clean energy trade, nanotechnology,
Yeah.
biotech, the marijuana stocks, right? Like we can make, there's always a theme. I agree with you.
Yeah.
But in something like AI, we can all agree it's going to be really impactful on how we operate as a world and at the business level even. We're excited within
Mm-hmm.
the walls of Bernie on what that's going to do for us long term. But I mean,
Yeah.
isn't it as simple to say that like, hey, the other 493 stocks in the S&P 500 have yet to really fully realize the benefits of AI, and this is going to, before it trickles down to this very specific subsector or very specific stock, isn't it okay just to say, like, yeah, this is going to trickle down to most of the economy, and most of the companies that I own in my diversified portfolio are going to benefit from this in a big way, and it's going to hit the bottom line. Like that is still yet to really hit the corporate, the quarterly earnings call. That's yet to really hit, every single business in the way that everyone anticipates it will, right? It should be
Well,
okay
look
just
at
to
look at
take
our
that
own.
win.
Yeah. Look at our own business, right? Um, for us, like we're like I think that most of the tech vendor meetings that I have these days, like they're AI, right?
Yeah,
They're hoping to solve some problem for us, right? So for me and my focus, it's like what can help us on the portfolio management and the trading side, right? And there are increasingly things that can do that for the advice. Like there's tools that help advisors stay on top of what they need to stay on top of. For financial planning, there's even, it's probably not maybe quite there yet, and I think that's the case for all this stuff.
yeah,
Most of the AI tools aren't there yet, but people are building AI for every industry, right?
right.
And it's just like an explosion. So yeah, you don't necessarily, maybe it pays to be an investor in Nvidia and those chips, Broadcom and their chips, like Meta, Google, whoever it is, who's spending all sorts of money on these LLMs. But I think you also have to look at the use cases. for this stuff. And there's a lot of boring companies where if they're forward thinking and they're adopting these AI, then that can, increase their efficiency. And, it might be, some boring bank stock or something like that that's,
Yeah,
able to smash it out of the park on earnings calls and does really well because they're utilizing AI, and maybe they're not even public about it, but it's just
right.
making them more efficient. It's making the economy more efficient. I think that's kind of a bullish case, for all stocks, rising tide and all boats, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's fair to say that these themes don't always play out in the cycle as we expect them to. There's it's never really a linear path from this idea or this theme into a really great economic and investment case. There is a choppiness
Hmm.
that comes with it, and sometimes it doesn't happen at the speed we'd like and to the magnitude we'd like. And you kind of need to hedge against that. That's why whenever a client, it's natural to read and hear these things and want to talk to your advisor and think about implementing it into your portfolio. But as advisors, it's also important for us to put in perspective. If I have a client that comes to me and says, "Hey, I'm really interested in this, data center play or this nuclear energy play," my counter to that is, to what extent do you want that to be represented in your portfolio? Is it really worth the time, the energy, and the risk to take a 1 or 2% position in a theme, or like how much of my portfolio would I need to invest in this theme for it to really make a big difference? And if I'm wrong, how did that impact my actual plans? Because if you take the route of, hey, I'm going to let this trickle into the economy, I'm going to have exposure to this AI theme throughout the companies that I hold in a diversified way. If it doesn't play out exactly as planned, that's okay. I'm balanced. But if I say, hey, I'm going to take 15% or 10% of my portfolio and really go all in on this, this is the future. This is what's coming next. Come on, it's obvious. Who doesn't see this
Hmm.
coming? Like, we're not going to be the idiots that don't, go big on this and lose out. And if it doesn't materialize that way and at that speed, what does that do? Right? That could be detrimental to the trajectory of the portfolio and your plans.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, 3D printing stocks, Rivian, right, for EVs. Like, there's all these plays that seemed so obvious, even something like Zoom during COVID, right?
I
It went
love the
up and
ARC
went up.
example. The ARC example was
Yeah.
like it. I remember 2021 clients saying, why don't you own this innovation ETF? We've got, Kathy Woods is the next Warren Buffett, but more innovative, more
Hmm.
forward thinking. She's on CNBC saying, Tesla is going to be a $5 trillion or whatever company, and
Right.
throwing out these things where you're sitting on your couch thinking, give me a piece of that. And if I don't get a
Yeah.
piece of it, then I'm in
Yeah.
trouble.
It's FOMO, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
FOMO. But it's really important as an investor to think like as sober as you can about what you're putting in the portfolio and why. Like, to your point that you were making, I think is a great point. What does a 1% allocation do for you, really? It's a shiny object. You get to say that it's in your portfolio. Maybe it does really well and you can brag about it at dinner parties. But how much risk are you taking if you really push that up to 10 or 15% of your portfolio? And let's just say that everything, the bottom drops out, right? Then that's when it starts to get detrimental. So I would say that I think these themes are interesting. I think they're
Yeah.
fun to talk about, but still having a diversified portfolio and an investment strategy pre-specified that you follow through all the theme discussions, through the highs and lows of the market. Really, that's the way to achieve the risk-adjusted returns that are there in the market. Right? People
Yeah.
just we've seen it over and over and over. People get in trouble chasing the shiny object.
Yeah. And as a segue to our next topic, is it fair to say that there's no gifts? There's no free lunch or gifts
There's no
involved
free
with investing?
lunch. Yeah, yeah. No, there's no free lunch with investing, right? You have to take on that volatility. But there is gifting in financial planning, isn't there?
Yes, one of the most exciting. I really do think this is one of the most exciting topics to talk about. It's that point in everyone's life where they feel like they've accumulated, a certain amount of money where now they can think about gifting. And I think today we should focus on gifting. Right, you can gift in several different ways. You can gift to charity, you can gift to family and friends. I want to focus on the gifting to family piece of this because I would say almost every client I work with, this comes up at some point. And, in various different magnitudes, but this is something that our clients are really passionate about. We get a lot of great questions about gifting, and I think it's pretty easy to lay up just some basic themes and ideas related to gifting in general. So, um, why don't we
Yeah,
do that? Why don't we just go through the list here of some
right. Yeah, there's a
ideas?
lot of ways you can do it.
There is, and I think in general, let me just first hit on. I get the question all the time. Hey, what's the tax impact of the gift I'm making? Like, if I gift this money to my family, is it a taxable event? Do I have to pay some sort of a tax? And I'm going to talk about this from a federal level because there's a small handful of states that have some sort of gift or inheritance tax. So if you're in one of those states, there's some extra wrinkles that might be thrown into this. For example, Pennsylvania has an inheritance tax. Um, so let's kind of like put that aside for this conversation because we've got clients in almost all 50 states, and people listening to this probably live in a variety of different states. But from a federal level, you are, as of 2025, almost $14 million per year per person uh, you have in your pocket as a lifetime gift and gift and estate exclusion amount. So you can give away during your life and at death almost it's $13.99 million. If you're a married couple, each spouse can collectively give almost 28 million because you can combine those and join forces. But at the end,
Pretty big number.
yeah, it's a big number. So you can give that away during your lifetime and at death. Almost 14 million. Next year it goes up to 15 million. So I would say for an overwhelming majority of people at the federal level, making gifts during your life or at death does not equate to any immediate, type of taxable event. So unless you live in one of those states with those little wrinkles, which is a small handful, the tax piece of this can, for the most part, be ignored if you're comfortably below those exemption amounts. So let's just clear that up first. The second thing is the annual exclusion piece of this. So every year you're able to give a certain amount of money away. Um, each individual can give a certain amount to an unlimited number of beneficiaries. With as long as you stay under that threshold, you're not making a gift that even counts towards that
Right.
13.99 or soon to be 15 million lifetime exclusion amount. This year it's $19,000. So if you have grandkids and you give each of them $10,000 apiece, you're below the $19,000 ceiling. So that's a gift that doesn't get reported from a tax standpoint.
And if you're one of the grandkids listening to this episode, go to your grandparent and say, "Hey, where's the extra 9?"
Yes, yeah. Print out a free gift coupon, compliments of, long story short, to your grandparents or parents even. Yes. So as long as you give below that amount, the 19,000 per year as an individual, like I can give 19,000 to an unlimited number of friends or family members as long as I'm below that amount. That doesn't count towards any of the 13.99 million lifetime. And I'd say most clients fall under that. They're giving 5, 10,000 a year,
Yeah.
even 15,000 a year, and it's just a comfortable gift, not reported. So if you give over and above the 19,000 to a specific individual, which you absolutely can do, you just simply have to fill out a gift tax return to report the amount over the exclusion that you gave in that year. And that's just the IRS's way of keeping tabs on how much you've given over your lifetime and at death. So it's not even that giving more than 19,000 triggers anything. It's just that doing that requires an administrative step. And if you're a
Just add it to the ledger.
Yeah, add it to the ledger. Exactly. And if you're a married couple, that 19,000 you can combine your gifts and you can double it. So 38 grand as a couple can be gifted to as many individuals as you'd like without worrying about any, gift tax reporting or gift tax consequences. So the dollar amounts give you a ton of wiggle room. They're really flexible, and I would say the only instances where you need to really think deep and do more planning is if you are running up against the lifetime. You think that your estate, the value of your estate, and the gifts you make during your lifetime are going to run over and above, that soon to be next year $15 million gift and estate exemption amount. So I'd say for most people, they comfortably fall below it, no big issues. And I think the big question then is, okay, if I'm really comfortable from a tax standpoint, and I don't think I'm running up on any big estate, consequences, how should I give? And what are,
Hmm.
kick this back to you, Andy, because I know you see this too on the investment side, moving things around in portfolios. What are kind of two ways that we see clients make gifts today?
Well, I mean, there's two ways. You can do it from cash,
Yep.
right? Or you can do it from, and I think this is something that people don't, realize all the time. Maybe they think about it more when it comes to charitable giving, but you can also give appreciated securities as well.
Yeah, which is great. And that's one of the exciting things we do. Once we coach clients through the tax piece of this, the cash versus stock angle
Hmm.
is really exciting. And I think I'm going to use a couple of examples to talk through recently how we've seen this in practice. Like, let's say you've got 20 some year old grandkid, and they're just starting to work, and they're saving and they're learning about investing, and you want to make, you're starting to think about your long-term planning. You want to make some gifts to your family, and you want to gift your grandchild, $15,000 each year. um, that's a way to reward them from entering into the working world, and to start to get them to really appreciate what you've built, and get them started. So if they're really savvy, or they're if they're financially savvy, you don't have worries about them going out and blowing the money, and you want to give them a jump start on investing. That might be a great use case for gifting appreciated stock. Let's say you've got an ETF in your portfolio. You bought it for $1,000, and now it's worth 10 or 15,000. That appreciated stock can be gifted into a brokerage account for them. The cost basis of that stock transfers over to them, and it's now held in their name. So if they sell it, they pay capital gains, but usually in that case, they might be in a much lower capital gains tax bracket than you.
Right. Well, I think a lot of people don't realize there is such thing as a 0% capital gains tax bracket. Is that true?
Right. Yeah. 0, 15, or 20%, essentially, plus the net investment income tax layered on top of that if your income's over a
Hmm.
quarter million a year. So um, if you're like, even if you're thinking about gifting to a child, if you're still in your working years, making a ton of money, and you want to, kind of rebalance your portfolio, but also want to do, make gifts, making a gift to someone in a much lower tax bracket instead of cash might be a way to get that capital gain out of your portfolio, and also give them, the gift that you've been wanting to make. And also the third benefit is it gets them excited and learning about investing. So that's usually, I think, the best use cases for gifting stock are: you're in a high tax bracket. The person you're gifting into the person you're making the gift to is in a lower tax bracket. You have confidence they're willing to maintain a portfolio and appreciate kind of the general principles of investing, and you'd like to alleviate yourself of some capital gains and want to see them, you know, appreciate that and build a portfolio for themselves.
Yeah. Seems like a good solution. I think one of the things that I get pushback on from this idea is, like, let's say I'm gifting to an 18-year-old, right, who maybe is going to college. This money maybe isn't being used for education expenses, but you're trying to get them a jump start. I hear the concern about, I'm not sure that they're able to handle this amount of money, or there's worries about what they're going to do with that kind of money. Um, so how do you view that piece of it? Because oftentimes we're talking about gifting. We're talking about gifting to someone who is still learning, right? So like how do you see when people do this gifting to someone who's younger and maybe hasn't had the life experiences where they'd fully appreciate that, what that amount of money can do for them? Like, how do you see clients really take that and have success with that?
Well, there's a
without
couple ways to
so-called
do that.
spoiling their kids.
Well,
Yeah.
there's a couple ways to do that. One is through force, and the other is through nice, gentle teaching. And through force would be
Right.
something like opening up the brokerage account, making the gift, and then having, the minor or the child, even adult child, add you as like a limited power of attorney on the account so they can view it and see if you're keeping the money in there or not.
Right.
So that's the by force option, getting some sort of a view only access to the account you are making the gifts to so you can see that it's there and they're not touching it. The other is by, and with the help of your advisor, sitting down with the family member, teaching them about the principles of investing, compound interest, showing
Hmm.
them what this gift might grow to over time with, you know, simple average returns, and then, you know, continuing to reinforce to them the value of saving and time value of money. So those are
Right.
really the two most successful ways.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think money is something that, still, I know that there's more and more of an emphasis all the time, especially from schools to start teaching personal finance and investing and things like that. But still, like, it's an area where a lot of people are so uncomfortable with it. And it's an area where, if you're young, there's no reason necessarily that you'd even know, what the options are. So, like, to me, viewing it as an educational experience. I've seen people do that and have tremendous success setting their kids up for success, with that. So to me, it's like, I think it's okay for us to acknowledge talking about money is scary. Maybe it's uncomfortable, but also like sometimes pushing the boundary on that makes a lot of sense to make sure that your kids really can springboard off or your grandkids really can springboard off, and be set up for success long term. Because it's not the money, it's not the amount of the money. It's like what they can do with the money, I think,
Right.
that's going to lead them to success or failure.
Exactly. Yeah. And the other layer is if you've got family members who are struggling financially,
Hmm.
um, and you just want to make a cash gift and you're doing it through the lens of, hey, I know you need some financial support. I'm giving you this, amount of money every year on a one-time basis. Do what you want with it. That's a use case on the cash side. Is just you either
Sure.
trust them to do something with it that's really financially mature, or they need the money, they're cash flow negative, and you
Yeah, it's
just
like a
want to.
hierarchy of needs things,
Yeah,
right? Like you need
exactly.
shelter, you need food, you need to be able to pay your bills, right? That's like the first use case for the money, and then anything up and above
Yeah.
that, that's when you can get a little bit more, patient with it.
Right. And
Hmm.
the final thing you can do is you can gift appreciated stock, you can gift cash. And we gave some examples of when that might be something to consider. The other piece of this, you can make a gift directly to a medical institution or a educational institution on behalf of someone else in any amount without any regard to any of the lifetime gift and estate tax consequences. So if you're willing, I'm going to give you a couple of examples to highlight this. If you've got a family member that just was uninsured and went through a major operation at a hospital and you want to give them $50,000 to pay for the operation, you're much better off going directly to the hospital, going through the billing department and
Hmm.
paying for it directly through that avenue than giving the money to
And
the
and
person.
so it has to go direct to the
Direct.
institution, right? It can't
Directly
route
from
through the
you to the
person.
medical institution on behalf of the individual in any amount does not count towards your $19,000 a year allotment. It does not count towards your lifetime, whether it's this year or next year, the 15 or so million lifetime estate and gift exemption amount. It's totally off the ledger. You can do that as many times as you want. And as long as you're giving directly to a medical institution, then that's,
Hmm.
really a great direct purpose gift that you're making. The other thing is to an educational institution. So if
Hmm.
you didn't go through the 529 plan route, you've got grandkids in school, you want to help them with tuition, you can cut a check directly to, let's say your grandkids are, you know, studious and excited enough to go to Virginia Tech like you and I did. And
Yeah. Great decision makers, clearly.
great decision makers, horrible decision makers when it comes to their school's football team, but all other things. They hit the nail on the head. They go to Virginia Tech. God only knows what tuition is there now. But whatever it is, if you write the check directly to Virginia Tech on behalf of the student with their student ID, for purposes of their tuition, that's also off the ledger. Any amounts allowed, no gift or
Hmm.
estate tax consequences. So if you've got someone in the family who needs a specific medical or educational, they have a need in those two areas, then you can make the gifts directly there without any issues.
Yeah, wow. That seems like a huge potential benefit for people who have the means and want to do that. Yeah, we know there's issues in this country with medical expenses, with tuition expenses, education expenses, all that stuff it can be really high. And if you're trying to make sure your loved ones don't have crippling debt when they get out of school or
Yeah.
after they heal, right? Like that could be something that's really valuable.
Yeah, those are, from a gift standpoint, I would say those are the basic principles of what we typically talk to clients about. I think the trickiest piece, once you get over the tax angle and the mechanics of it, as we described, is just timing and amount. And especially
Hmm.
looking at this in the context of your long term planning, trying to determine how much you're going to have at the end of the rainbow in your portfolio, weigh that against your own personal planning uncertainty, and then saying, okay, I'm going to have a decent net worth when I pass away. I want to give it a warm hand instead of a cold one, as they say. And I want to see my family enjoy this and utilize this during my life, but I'm still a little nervous about what that should look like. That's really where your advisor comes in and you talk through pros and cons of all these options. And on the amount front, I'd say normally people are most comfortable starting out like anything. You ride with training wheels before you take them off. You start doing these things in smaller amounts and then you ramp them up as time goes on. And especially if it's in a case of a client where they're going to have a significant legacy to leave to their family, once they start doing that lifetime gifting and they see the impact it's having on the family and they see the enjoyment from that, they get more comfortable as time goes on.
I think that's an excellent point about, well, obviously you have to balance against your own personal plan. You certainly don't want to run out of money yourself, but being able to see your loved ones use that money and enjoy that money and be set up for success for whatever that may be for them. That's a really, I think, underappreciated piece. So much of estate planning, I feel like, is this is what's going to happen to my money after I'm gone.
Right.
So you'll never even get to see that. But now you'll be able to see your grandkid go to college or help your son or daughter, with, expenses related to a birth or something like that, right? Like you're able to really see that money get used and enjoyed. And I think a lot of people end up feeling really good about that.
Yeah, and I think today we maybe scratched the surface of this, some general principles around the annual gift exclusion amount and how that ties into your lifetime allotment for giving it, during life and at death. But these are all great questions to, ask and good conversations to have. One where your advisor plays a pivotal role with you getting comfortable as time goes on. But I'm really excited, and I'm going to preemptively put on the list for next week. I'd like to talk about the charitable piece of this, um, because there's a lot of really exciting things you can do with charitable giving during life, specifically, that I want to highlight and point out. So, if we're still talking
Is
about
that
AI
is part of that is part of that contributing to Virginia Tech's NIL fund so we can get better football players?
we're going to have to, depending on how this season goes in just a few weeks, we might have to pull together half the country to help them pay for a serviceable football team.
All right. Well, I can't wait to discuss all that. We won't talk too much about college football, though I may want to. I will say, one thing we've been getting quite a bit of traction on these podcasts, and we talk with clients all the time. We talk with you all the time. That's how we generate the topics for the podcast. But if you do have any questions that you do want to send our way, we do have an email address, longstoryshort@bernie.com. Send us your question ideas. We'd be more than happy to address them here on the podcast. Thanks, everyone.
This This podcast featured Adam Newman and Andy Pratt of Bernie Wealth Management, which is a division of the Bernie Company, an investment advisory firm. Adam is managing partner and is chartered financial analyst, certified financial planner, master of taxation, and retirement income certified professional. And Andy is senior partner and director of investment strategy and is a chartered financial analyst and chartered alternative investment analyst. Long story short involves general discussions of a broad range of current financial topics related to financial planning, taxes, investment, and retirement. This content is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended as personalized investment advice or recommendation. It does not take into account your financial situation. You'll need to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who is familiar with your specific circumstances. Investing involves risks, and past performance is not indicative of future results. The Bernie Company is an SEC registered investment advisor. Registration with the SEC or any state securities authority does not apply to the Bernie Company or any of its principals or employees, possesses a particular level of skill or training in the investment advisory business or any other business. Bernie Company does not provide legal, tax, or accounting advice but offers it through third parties. Before making any financial decisions, clients should consult their legal and/or tax advisors.